I used to think my life was solid. I had a great wife, Amanda. We had been together for years, and honestly, I never had any reason to doubt her. She was loyal, or at least I thought she was. I always believed that there were women who would never betray you, and Amanda, she was one of them. That's what I kept telling myself. We were happy, or so I thought. I wasn't a wealthy man. Not by a long shot. But I worked hard, provided, and I figured that was enough. I'd hear stories about people cheating, marriages falling apart, but those were just other people's problems, right? That kind of stuff didn't happen to me. Amanda and I had this trust, this unspoken bond, and I thought we were untouchable. Sure, I had my fears. Who doesn't? The fear that one day something might come along and shake up our world. But I brushed those thoughts aside. They were just irrational fears, nothing to worry about. Amanda wasn't like that. She'd never do something like that to me. I was certain of it. We had our little routines, our inside jokes, our plans for the future. I never even considered the possibility that something could go wrong. I was focused on building a life together, and in my head, everything was fine. Looking back now, I realize how naive I was, how easy it is to believe in something when you've never had to question it. I believed that bad things happen to other people. Betrayal? That was someone else's nightmare, not mine. But I guess everyone thinks that, right up until it happens to them. It all started with something so casual, I didn't even think twice about it at first. I was chatting with my neighbor, Dave, one afternoon. We were just shooting the breeze, talking about weekend plans, nothing serious, and then, out of nowhere, he says something that sticks with me. "Hey, John, I saw Amanda the other day," Dave said. "She was having lunch with some guy. Didn't look like anyone I've seen around before." At first, I just kind of shrugged it off. I figured it was probably nothing. Amanda has friends, co-workers. She's always been social. "Oh yeah," I replied, trying to sound casual. "Probably someone from work." Dave gave me this look, like he was unsure if he should say more. "Maybe," he said, "but it looked a bit close, you know. They were sitting pretty close, talking like more than friends." That's when I felt it, a little knot tightening in my stomach. But I brushed it off. It's funny how your mind can start working overtime, trying to rationalize things before they've even sunk in. "Nah, it's probably nothing," I laughed, but that knot in my stomach didn't go away. After that conversation, I couldn't stop thinking about what Dave had said. Amanda would have told me if she was meeting up with a male friend, right? And what did he mean by close? It was probably just Dave misinterpreting things, right? I kept telling myself that over and over, like a mantra. But the seed of doubt had been planted. As much as I wanted to ignore it, I couldn't. I started replaying little moments in my head, times when Amanda had been a bit distant, those late work meetings, the nights she'd come home a little later than usual. Things that hadn't seemed like a big deal before suddenly felt off. But even then, I didn't want to believe it. I kept convincing myself that Dave had gotten it wrong. Amanda would never do that to me. We were solid, right? Still, I couldn't shake that feeling. It lingered, gnawing at me, even when I tried to ignore it. And that's when things really started to unravel. After that conversation with Dave, I couldn't get the idea out of my head. But instead of confronting it, I did what anyone would do. I buried it. I told myself it was nothing, just a misunderstanding. Come on, Amanda wouldn't cheat on me. Not her, not us. So, I started rationalizing everything. Those late nights she spent at work? It's normal, right? She's got a demanding job. Sometimes she has to stay late, meet clients, handle last-minute projects. I'd always been fine with it before, so why should this be any different? And what about the texts? She's been glued to her phone a little more lately, sure, but that's just the world we live in. Everyone's always on their phone. I told myself it was probably work stuff. Or maybe she was just catching up with friends. Nothing suspicious there. The lunches? Well, Amanda works with a lot of people, and some of them are men. That's just how it is. People network, grab lunch together. It doesn't mean anything. Dave must have just seen something innocent and twisted it into something more. Every time a thought crept in that maybe something was wrong, I'd push it down. I didn't want to believe it, so I convinced myself it wasn't true. I'd see Amanda come home, kiss me on the cheek, and smile like everything was normal. And in those moments, I believed we were fine. I needed to believe we were fine. But no matter how much I tried to rationalize, that doubt kept creeping back in. It was subtle at first, just a whisper in the back of my mind. But as time went on, it got louder. And the more I tried to ignore it, the more it started to weigh on me. I could feel something wasn't right, but I wasn't ready to admit it. Not yet, because once I admitted it, everything would change. And I wasn't ready for that. It wasn't some big dramatic moment when I found out. There was no confrontation in the middle of the street, no shouting match. It happened quietly, almost too quietly. And that's what made it worse. It was a Friday night, and Amanda was supposed to be out for one of those work dinners. You know, the kind that had become more frequent lately. I didn't think much of it at first. I was just sitting at home, watching TV, trying to relax. But something was nagging at me. That little voice in the back of my mind that had been there since Dave made that comment. I couldn't shake it. Her phone was sitting on the kitchen counter. She had forgotten to take it with her. I don't know what made me do it, but I walked over, picked it up, and stared at it for a minute. I wasn't planning on snooping. I mean, I wasn't that guy, but something inside me told me to look. So, I did. I unlocked her phone and scrolled through the messages. Most of it was the usual, texts from friends, work stuff. But then, there it was. A thread of messages from a number I didn't recognize. I opened it, and that's when I saw it. Can't wait to see you again tonight. Last night was amazing. My stomach dropped. My hands went cold, and it felt like time just stopped. There it was, in black and white. Confirmation of everything I had been trying to ignore. I kept scrolling, reading message after message, each one worse than the last. It wasn't just a fling. This had been going on for a while. There were plans, emotions, memories that didn't belong to me. They belonged to her and him. The worst part? It wasn't just physical, it was emotional. She was sharing parts of herself with him that used to be mine. I don't remember how long I stood there, just staring at her phone. It felt like hours, though it was probably just minutes. I wasn't angry, not yet at least. I was numb. I couldn't wrap my head around it. The woman I thought I knew, the one I trusted more than anything, was living a completely different life behind my back. When Amanda came home later that night, I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I just watched her walk through the door, smiling, like everything was fine. But now I knew the truth, and nothing would ever be the same again. After discovering the truth, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. Everything seemed blurry, unreal. The texts replayed in my mind over and over, like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. But this wasn't a dream. It was my reality. I couldn't stop thinking, what did he have that I didn't? Was it his money? His success? Was he younger, more attractive? My mind was spiraling, and every thought seemed to lead back to one central idea: I wasn't enough. That's what hit me the hardest. The realization that somehow I wasn't enough for her. It crushed me. I had always prided myself on being a good husband, a good provider. No, I wasn't rich or flashy, but I worked hard. I took care of Amanda, gave her the life I thought she wanted, and yet it wasn't enough. I wasn't enough. I started questioning everything about myself, every insecurity I'd ever had. My looks, my career, my worth came rushing to the surface. I felt small, insignificant, like I had failed in every possible way. And the worst part, it wasn't just the affair, it was the fact that she had chosen someone else over me. Someone who, in my mind, was better than me. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. I couldn't focus at work, couldn't concentrate on anything other than the constant loop of self-doubt playing in my head. I felt like I was sinking, like I was being swallowed by this overwhelming sense of failure. There were nights where I just sat there, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in my mind, trying to figure out where I went wrong, what I could have done differently. But no matter how much I analyzed it, I couldn't come up with an answer. And that made it even worse. It made me feel powerless, like my entire world had been turned upside down, and there was nothing I could do to fix it. The emotional toll was unbearable. I felt like I was losing myself, like the man I had been before. All of this was disappearing, and all that was left was a shell of who I used to be. It took me a few days to even gather the strength to say anything. How do you confront someone about something like this? Every time I looked at her, my mind would flash back to those messages. But I couldn't keep pretending, couldn't keep living with the weight of knowing what I knew. One night, after she came home from another work meeting, I decided I couldn't stay silent any longer. We were sitting at the dinner table, and I could barely eat. My stomach was in knots. I couldn't even look her in the eye. Finally, I just blurted it out. "Amanda, I know." She stopped, her fork halfway to her mouth, and looked at me, confused. "What do you mean?" she asked. I could feel the lump in my throat, my hands trembling. "I know about him. I know about the affair." For a moment, there was silence. She just stared at me, her face frozen, like she was trying to process what I had just said. Then she lowered her fork, pushed her plate away, and sighed. "John," that was it, just my name, like it was an apology in itself. And that's when I knew. I had hoped for some sort of denial, some kind of explanation that would make this easier. But instead, she just sat there, looking guilty. She didn't even try to lie. "How long?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She hesitated. "A few months." That was it. Just a few months. As if that made it better, as if that somehow made it less painful. But it didn't. It felt like a punch to the gut. I wanted to scream, wanted to lash out, but all I could do was sit there, stunned, as the reality of it all sank in. "Why?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Why him? Why now? What did I do wrong?" She looked away, couldn't meet my eyes. "It wasn't about you," she said quietly. "It was about me." I felt disconnected, like we were drifting apart, and he made me feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had been here, trying, working hard, making sure we were okay, and all the while, she had been looking for something, someone else. I felt my chest tighten, the anger and hurt bubbling up. "So what? You just decided to throw it all away for him?" She didn't have an answer. There was no apology, no promise to fix things. Just silence. The kind of silence that tells you everything you need to know. I stood up from the table, unable to take it anymore. I can't do this right now. And with that, I walked out of the room, leaving her sitting there alone at the table. In that moment, I knew things would never be the same again. After that confrontation, everything felt hollow. The house was quiet, almost too quiet, but not in a peaceful way, more like the kind of quiet that presses down on you, makes you feel suffocated. I spent hours just sitting there, replaying the conversation in my head. The questions, her lack of answers, the way she had said my name, like an apology, but without the words. And now, I was stuck. Stuck between two choices, neither of which felt right. Should I try to stay and fix this? Could we even fix it? I mean, was there anything left worth saving? Or should I just walk away and leave everything we'd built behind? It's funny, when you're faced with something like this, the memories come rushing back. Not the bad ones, but the good ones. I found myself thinking about the early days with Amanda, the way we laughed, the way we talked about the future, how everything seemed so simple back then. Those memories were hard to shake. But then the reality would hit. The texts, the lies, the months of betrayal that I hadn't seen coming. And I'd wonder, how could I ever look at her the same way again? How could I ever trust her again? I was torn. Part of me didn't want to let go of what we had, or at least what I thought we had. I had invested so much in this relationship, in us. Walking away felt like admitting defeat, like saying everything we had built didn't matter anymore. But the other part of me, the part that was still raw from the betrayal, knew that staying might mean living in constant doubt, always wondering if it would happen again. How do you rebuild something that's been shattered like that? I kept going back and forth in my head. Should I give it another shot? Try to rebuild what had been broken? Or should I save myself from more pain and just leave? No matter which way I looked at it, neither option felt easy. Staying meant living with the weight of what she'd done. Leaving meant starting over, alone. But deep down, I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't keep living in this limbo forever. At some point, I'd have to decide. I realized pretty quickly that I couldn't do this on my own. The weight of it all was too much to carry alone. So, I did what I'd been avoiding. I reached out to the people I trusted the most. The first person I called was my best friend, Tom. We've known each other forever, and I knew he wouldn't sugarcoat anything. When I told him about the affair, I could hear the disbelief in his voice. "Man, I don't even know what to say," he said, after a long pause. "That's rough. I'm sorry. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, maybe some grand piece of advice that would solve everything, but instead, Tom just listened. And honestly, that's what I needed. I didn't need someone to tell me what to do. I just needed someone to hear me, to let me get it all out. Then I called my parents. That was harder. Telling them that my marriage, the one they'd watched me build, was falling apart, wasn't easy. My mum was devastated, and my dad, well, he was angry, not at me, but at the situation. "You deserve better than this," he said. "Don't let her make you feel like you're not enough." That hit me hard. My dad's always been the strong, silent type, but hearing him say that made me realize I wasn't just a victim in this. I had a choice. I had a say in what happened next. My family and friends offered all kinds of advice. Some told me to leave her immediately, that I didn't owe her anything after what she'd done. Others suggested I give it time, maybe try counseling, see if there was anything left to salvage. The advice was all over the place, but it helped me see that no matter what I decided, I wasn't alone. I had people who cared about me, who had my back, and who would support me no matter which path I chose. But at the end of the day, I knew the decision was mine. No one could tell me what to do. I had to figure out what was best for me. And while I appreciated the support, it made me realize that the only person who could make this decision was me. After all the conversations with friends and family, one thing became clear. No matter what I decided about Amanda, I needed to take care of myself. I couldn't keep drowning in what had happened. I had to find a way to move forward, even if I didn't know exactly what that looked like. So I threw myself into my work. I figured if I could focus on something I could control, something that didn't involve the emotional wreckage of my marriage, maybe I'd start to feel more like myself again. And you know what? It worked, at least at first. I started taking on more projects, staying late at the office, and pushing myself to hit new goals. It wasn't just about getting ahead in my career, it was about proving something to myself. Proving that I was still capable, that I still had something to offer. Work became my escape, the one area of my life where I didn't feel like I was failing. The more I focused on work, the more I started to see small successes. My confidence slowly began to rebuild. Each little win at the office felt like a step toward healing. I wasn't just the guy who had been cheated on anymore. I was building something for myself, on my own terms. But it wasn't just about career. I knew I had to focus on my emotional and physical health too. I started going to the gym again, something I hadn't done in a while. It wasn't just about getting in shape. It was about regaining control over my life piece by piece. Every workout felt like I was reclaiming a part of myself that I had lost in the midst of everything. And then there was therapy. At first, I didn't think I needed it. But after everything that had happened, I realized I couldn't just work through this on my own. Talking to someone who wasn't emotionally involved, helped me make sense of the chaos in my head. It allowed me to see that the betrayal wasn't a reflection of my worth, but something I had to heal from. Day by day, I felt myself getting stronger, not just physically, but mentally. I wasn't where I wanted to be yet, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was moving in the right direction. And that was enough to keep going. As I focused on myself, on my career, my health, and my healing, I started to notice something. Slowly but surely, I was regaining my self-worth. I wasn't the same guy I was when I found out about the affair. I was stronger now, more confident in who I was and what I could achieve. I didn't need validation from anyone else, least of all from Amanda. I was finally becoming the man I wanted to be, on my own terms. It wasn't just about career success or hitting the gym. It was about recognizing that I had value beyond what had happened to me. I wasn't defined by her betrayal anymore. I had moved past it, and I had come out on the other side stronger than I'd ever been. And then something unexpected happened. I met someone. I wasn't looking for it. Honestly, after everything with Amanda, I wasn't even sure if I was ready to trust again. But sometimes life has a way of surprising you. I met Sarah through a mutual friend, and at first, it was nothing serious. Just casual conversations, no pressure. But the more we talked, the more I realized there was something different about her. With Sarah, there was no pretense, no games. She was kind, understanding, and most importantly, she didn't push. She let things develop naturally, and that's exactly what I needed. After everything I'd been through, trust didn't come easy. But Sarah didn't rush me. She didn't expect me to be perfect. She just wanted to get to know me for who I was. At first, I was hesitant. I had my guard up, afraid of getting hurt again. But over time, I realized that not everyone is like Amanda. Not everyone is going to betray you. With Sarah, it was different. I could feel it. There was something real there, something I hadn't felt in a long time. She helped me see that love isn't always about grand gestures or sweeping emotions. Sometimes it's about quiet moments of understanding, about feeling safe with someone. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could let my guard down. I wasn't defined by my past anymore. I was ready to move forward with her. Rebuilding trust wasn't easy. It took time to heal, time to trust again. But slowly, I started to open up. And with Sarah by my side, I realized that I could love again, that I deserved to love again. Looking back, it's hard to believe how far I've come. What started as the lowest point in my life, being betrayed by the person I thought I'd spend forever with, ended up becoming the turning point I never expected. It wasn't easy, but here I am, standing on the other side, stronger, wiser, and most importantly, happy. Meeting Sarah wasn't something I planned for, but it's funny how life works. She didn't just show me that I could trust again. She showed me that real love doesn't have to be complicated. It's not about grand gestures or constantly proving yourself. It's about respect, understanding, and feeling at peace with someone. And with her, I've found that. I used to think happiness was tied to what I had with Amanda, our past, our memories, the life we built together. But now, I realize that happiness comes from within. It's something you build for yourself. Sure, love can be a part of that, but you have to find peace within yourself first. And I did. The bitterness I once felt over the betrayal, it's gone. Not because I've forgotten what happened, but because I've let go of it. I've stopped letting it define me. Amanda's choices don't shape who I am anymore. I've moved on from that chapter, and I'm writing a new one filled with possibility, growth, and love. With Sarah, I've discovered a new kind of happiness, one that's steady, fulfilling, and grounded in mutual respect. And more importantly, I've discovered happiness within myself. I'm proud of the man I've become, of the strength I found when I thought I had none left. The truth is, the betrayal was painful, but it was also a gift. It forced me to face the parts of myself I'd been ignoring. It pushed me to grow, to find my own strength, and to create a life I'm proud of. And now, I can honestly say I'm in a better place than I ever imagined. Life didn't turn out the way I thought it would, but sometimes the unexpected detours take you exactly where you need to be. I'm living proof of that.